Hello, everyone. Well, thanks for being here, and I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage my fellow panelists today. First, I'd like to thank the AI House to make this session possible, and special thanks to Daniel, who's here from Swisscom, who invited us to moderate this session. I'm Alex Cabaret. I'm with Devex. Devex is a media platform for the global development and humanitarian communities. If you check us online, devex.com, you'll find lots of articles on global development at large, but also on AI and development. We've been writing about it a lot these past few months and years, I guess. So before we get started, I'd like to have a quick hands up for people who work directly or believe they have an impact on development topics or humanitarian in the room. So let's see if they're curious or people from the sector. All right. Great. So yeah, we'll try to unpack what it means currently, how AI is used in development, humanitarian issues, and brought different voices from different types of organizations, try to identify already existing solutions, discuss challenges, and possibly what's we can hope for the future or what we can fear for the future. So AI is here. I think Peng just before was saying that. AI is here. You can't avoid it. It's going to scale fast. We need to find a way to work with it. And so we are working in the SDG world, Sustainable Development Goals. Looks like only 15% of the SDG targets are on track to be achieved by 2030. And it was a 15-year agenda. We have 6 years to go. And I like to put these stats. I didn't learn them by heart, so I'll read them out. Royal Institute of Technology of Stockholm did a study. I did not verify the methodology of the study, but the study says AI can have a beneficial impact on 79% of the SDG target, but it can also inhibit 35% of them. So with that in mind, we won't solve the problem tonight, but we'll try to find some insights about how AI can be used. So, Lauren, I'll start with you. If you can start by introducing yourself very quickly, share one example of how DataKind uses AI for development or social impact purposes, and what's your general take on the situation of AI?
Thank you. I'd love to know what the 31% are that aren't going to be impacted. I'm Lauren Woodman. I'm the CEO of DataKind. DataKind is a nonprofit. We've been around for just over 10 years that is committed to bringing data science and AI into the social impact sector. We work in a variety of topics, but most of our work is focused on humanitarian, frontline health workers, economic opportunity, and increasingly climate and environmental justice issues. We are very optimistic about the impact of AI. I think we are concerned that we are thoughtful about the approaches that we take, but we are very optimistic that we are moving in the right direction. One of the places that we are working most directly right now with humanitarian organizations is to use generative AI to unlock the knowledge that currently exists on HDX, on the Humanitarian Data Exchange. All that data's been up there for years. It is super hard to get to. Most of it isn't tagged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But using generative AI, we've been able to actually meta-tag the entire HDX platform with about a 98% level of confidence, which is now allowing us to take that data and bring it into a platform that we can use for decision making.
Okay, so before we go to the next speaker, how is HDX used by humanitarian organizations?
HDX is used, their data is stored up there from various and sundry projects over the years. It's a great body of data from which you can gather insights about what has worked in the past, what has not worked in the past, what other organizations have done, what those outcomes have been, which populations have been served. It's a huge variety of information up there. In the pre-generative AI world, we had to go identify those data sets, bring them into an analysis platform, and then use that data, in order to figure out whatever the question was that we were asking. Identifying that data set, cleaning those data sets, tagging those data sets, getting them tagged, and then by the time you get all of that done, there was new data up there, and then maybe that actually outpaced what you had. But with generative AI, we can make that much quicker, and we can make it really a living platform so that we can stay up to date on what available is
Okay,
is
so
available.
data was there, but it was not being used properly. It was really hard to use it.
We can get to
Required
it.
a lot. All right. So Manu, you founded Data Pop Alliance and the Opal project with MIT, I guess. Can you give a quick intro of your global take on AI, how it can be applied, and give one example of how your organization applies AI for social impact?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I'll start by saying that I'm more skeptical than you are.
Oh.
But I mean, I'm not cynical either. So
Okay.
we can, yeah. I mean, I'm skeptical in the sense that, I mean, you know, when I look at the state of the world today, I'm pretty depressed. So I'm not sure we're going in the right direction. I read Sam Altman saying that we were entering the best world ever. I don't know if we live in the same world, but I don't think we are entering. I mean, if you look around, it's like, so the internet is 30 years old. 30 years ago, it was the genocide in Rwanda. And I wonder, like, what are we making? What are we doing with all this technology? And so I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not saying, you know, it's horrible, everything is bad. And I believe in technology. But still, I think we should do a much better job than we are at actually using the technology. And I think that's what we're, you know, here to discuss. So having said that, in terms of a concrete application, so Data Pop Alliance is also an NGO founded with the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative and the MIT Media Lab, also about 10 years ago. And so one application, for instance, is using so AI and like open algorithms, so the Opal framework, to study climate-induced migration in Senegal. So that's a concrete example. And so, you know, Senegal, as many countries in the region, has been hit more and more, and you know, differently over the years by climate-related shocks. Flooding is a big problem in Dakar every year, and we should know better what's going to be the impact of a you know, flood, where people are going to move, and you know, and then you know, it can help with planning and you know, response preparedness, all those sorts of things. And you can do that, of course, if you have access to cell phone metadata, so call detail records, and you can build, you know, predictive models and things like that. So that's, I would say that's, you know, that's my example, and I can expand on it.
All right.
Later.
Well, that's concrete. I guess you have many other examples. Kate, I'd like to bring you in. We did not have a chance to speak before the session, so it'd be great for us to hear about how Microsoft comes into play, Microsoft Philanthropies specifically, and yeah, what's your take on AI and how it can impact humanitarian and global development?
Yeah, no, thanks, Alex. And it's great to be part of this conversation today. I would say, like Lauren, I'm very optimistic about AI, and I'm also very glad that we're having the conversation with the skeptics, because it's, you know, it's really important to look at the AI for good, and also some of the challenges that AI might bring as well. I lead Microsoft Philanthropies, and our mission is really focused on how do we help build the digital and AI capacity of nonprofits around the world, and NGOs and IGOs. And we do that in a couple of different ways. But ultimately, it's about how do we actually get technology into the hands of people, and how do we teach people how to use it. And you know, if you look at the mission of Microsoft, you know, empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. You know, just if we relied on the business model and market economics alone, we wouldn't probably reach all the people and communities that we want to reach. So sometimes you need some targeted interventions, and so that's you know, what Philanthropies is focused on. So we have a team called Tech for Social Impact, where we make sure that nonprofits and NGOs can get affordable technology with tailored solutions that are you know, fit for the purpose. And then we do a lot around digital inclusion as well, so digital skilling. And you know, we launched an AI skills initiative last year, because it's, you know, it's very clear that AI is here, and everybody everywhere is going to need some degree of AI fluency. And so in some ways it was a natural extension of the digital skills work that we had been doing for many, many years. But actually, I think it's just it's a much bigger opportunity. Like I think it's going to be one of the defining questions for this generation in terms of how is this technology going to be used. So, you know, we focus a lot on helping people and organisations understand how to use the technology.
Okay, so it's a lot about access to tech and developing skill sets. Yeah. All right. So Bernhard, you're with the World Food Program, innovation. you're running kind of incubators to help find solutions to end or mitigate hunger and nutrition issues in the world. So can quick intro of World Food Program innovation. I guess a lot of people in the room knows more or less what it is, but and one example that you'd like to highlight.
Absolutely, and like World Food Program with the mission of saving lives in emergencies, but also sustainably ending hunger. Like so, there's in 120 countries and territories. So I'm leading the Global World Food Program Innovation Accelerator, but it's not just on WFP what we're doing right now. We're running a total of 16 different social impact accelerator programs. Part of that is because there's actually not enough technology, startups, innovation out in the system. And like so, we are running different programs also like for the Gates Foundation, for different governments, for different other organizations, actually bringing in this kind of technology, startup, innovation mindset and solutions and startups into doing that. And just to say in terms of how does the World Food Program look at AI? And I think this is where I'm probably mixed between, and I'm not sure if Emmanuel is actually a pessimist, or I mean, I'm as pessimistic about like the world, if you want, whereas like, global hunger has been on the rise, 333 million acutely hungry people right now, which is something that should be disconcerting for all of us. But I'm saying then, okay, there's hope. Hope can be AI. Hope can be through some of these solutions. And just to say, like really quick one. So like we use AI and big data analytics for supply chain optimization has helped us save $50 million. That's getting transferred into more food assistance to people. We're using AI, natural language processing, for feedback from the people we serve. So like we can actually process and get like real-time feedback from the people rather than like always getting like surveys written up weeks later and like getting a lot more. Using AI for finding out where hungry people are, where they after emergencies, or after earthquakes, and even with startups. So some of the startups use AI, satellite images, for helping smaller farmers use precision agriculture. That, or even carbon credits, like there's lots of different examples. And I think I want to just like say that like I'm excited about AI. As much as I'm concerned about like how can we democratize the access, how can we actually bring more people into the realm, but like I'm excited about the opportunities that we have.
Right, and maybe we'll talk about the challenges related to that. So there are some clear applications that AI can help find solutions to specific disease or nutrition issues. But I know that we talk a lot about bias in AI algorithm, the way it's built. And Bernhard, I've read about an article, we were talking about that, and how local populations that you're aiming to serve can be better included in sharing data. So whatever solution you use, AI solution you use, is a better fit for the interventions. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean,
or share a couple of challenges, examples you've been into?
I think this is where like these challenges are not unique to AI. I mean, like it also starts with like, if you're asking people for consent about what? Is it an informed consent, or like do they know what's actually happening with their data? So like this is why, I mean, WFP was established even a chief privacy officer, like, it's at the core of a lot of the digital tools that we're working on. And it's not just on AI, it's even on basic like mobile data, cash transfers that we're using, where that it has to be at the core. Now with AI in particular, I think that I see the challenges on more in the sense of like how can we include more people? Like when we're talking about like, we're having this conversation here in Davos. How can we broaden this? How can governments, communities, people in developing countries be part of this conversation and maybe be the experts in driving these AI solutions, and not just people that went to Stanford. Nothing against people that went to Stanford, but like or Harvard. This is one of the aspects of like how do we not only bring people co-develop solutions, but for me this is an aspect of that has to be built into any type of solution design for innovation startups and so on. It's just that for AI, it's getting a lot more concerning where, maybe there's a monopoly of people who know and a lot of people who don't.
All right. And Lauren, I guess you have something to say on this topic as well, because you do help collecting all of the data. And so what do you see in there? What are the...
We do, but I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, the challenges are not unique to AI. They're challenges at every nonprofit knows very well. The data is not fully representative. There's bias built into the data. There are things that we have to do in order to make that data be more fully representative to the communities that will be impacted by decisions that are made based on that data. There are questions around access to tools that are the tools that are available in one part of the world may not be available in other parts of the world, and we've got to deal with the access problem. And there are challenges around inequalities in how we are skilling people to use and take advantage of AI, or data science in general, for that matter. So there's, the challenges are not particularly unique, and they're not particularly unknown. They're not dissimilar from the inequities that we have seen since the beginning of the digital revolution, in that there are communities of haves and there are communities of haves not. The data is not fully representative, and we've got to continue to be focused on how we bridge those gaps.
All right, so Manu, what's your take on that? I know you've been working out on gender data, notably, and so...
On gender data?
Yeah.
So yeah, just a few points. So I'm not I'm not a pessimist. I don't want to be put in that box. But actually, yeah. So we work on. So I'm a development economist by training, and so we work as Data Alliance on pretty concrete and complex problems. So, for example, gender-based violence in Latin America, or suicide among young men in Morocco. I mentioned the case of climate change migration, and I think the root causes or the enabling factors are very cultural, and so you can have the best tools, data, AI models, etc. So if you don't change the culture, then these phenomena are going to repeat themselves. So the question is, how can what we do using AI actually impact the incentives, the mindsets, the culture, and that's very difficult. So it's in that sense that I'm maybe a healthy skeptic, in the sense that I think that you have to get to the very deep root causes of the problems. Hunger is not, when you have wars everywhere around the world, then yes, you have hunger. And then you can use, and it's very good to use AI, but actually the best way to avoid hunger around the world would be to not have wars. And so the question is, okay, what is really? And then I know there's a session after this one about how to use AI for peace, etc. But I think even if we work on, let's say, last mile or second to last mile problems, which are very important, I still want to have in mind this whole causal chain, and not be so I guess the argument is, I don't believe in techno fixes and these kinds of things. I don't think any of us does, but that's what I meant. Okay, just super quickly about the gender. So yeah, when we work on a project on gender-based violence, for instance, we know that reporting of gender-based violence is not representative, and it's not random. So the bias is not random. So if you work in Colombia and in Bogota, you have some neighborhoods that will have 10% reporting rate, others will have 20%. So yeah, when you write a paper, when you do a model, when you do a dashboard, if you present your model as that's the truth, then yeah, you're lying, and it's very hard to it's pretty hard to actually correct for the sample bias. So you need to do ground truthing, you need to do interviews, and there's all sorts of new ways to actually get these kinds of information. So I guess the short answer is that it's we know it exists. It's pretty hard problem, but it's not unfixable.
Yeah, it's a long-term work, I guess, to train people and find ways to better collect data and get people to share data that we need. And on data sharing and access to skill set, Kate, what's there are lots of conversations here this week about AI ethics and governance, and so how do you work on these issues when you partner with organizations?
Yeah, I think look, responsible AI is never, is absolutely critical, and I think so many important issues have been raised, and it's perhaps it's good that society and policymakers are demanding more. I think it's good that there's more scrutiny from regulators and policymakers to govern these new technologies. Microsoft certainly has a responsible AI framework that's applied and really helping at working with customers to understand the intended benefits of AI that they using those technologies, but also the potential harms of using those technologies, and being able to do that, right at the beginning in the early design stages. But there's so many flip sides, I think, to these technologies. You could think about facial recognition is something we all benefit from when we walk through the airport, and of course, there can be facial recognition used that could have really serious consequences from a human rights perspective, or voice recognition. It's I was hearing the other day how AI is being used for ALS, people who have ALS, to be able to communicate when they start being unable to use their own voice. I mean, hugely beneficial. But you could also think about voice recognition that is used for other more nefarious situations. And so I think it's really critical that that responsible AI frameworks are being applied, and I think we should all welcome increased laws and regulations around this technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there's a session tomorrow on that, and the UN Tech Envoy comes here to talk about AI governance and frameworks, and there'll be sessions throughout the week. But Bernhard, on facial recognition, I was about to come to you on that, because I guess WFP uses it for maybe some of the vouchers programs. Or how do you ensure security? Or
no, not facial recognition. I mean, this is something that I guess I don't consider an innovation anymore at this point. We're using biometrics in any shape or form in multiple ways. Now, typically that's, depending on the population, where this might be refugees, they get registered biometrically by UNHCR. We then use the same, essentially the database, but we may not even know who those people are, but they've been biometrically registered, and we just know by pinging the database, could be fingerprints, could be iris scans, different things. And yes, it helps us making sure that, the aid or people that donate to us, that the aid is getting to the people that it's intended for. Now, in some cases, it's also a protection issue where, specifically making sure that, children are not being misused for coming there twice and stuff like that. So it's not an easy one. But then it's maybe just going back on how, because at the heart of your questions are can technology be bad? Of course, right? Can it be bad? Now, but this is where I think it's a very, very important topic to talk about also, where it's should we not use things because we're scared about negative consequences? I agree with Kate here, where it's we gotta make sure that we have responsible AI, responsible technology usage, that we are testing against, we have safety nets. Wherever we are testing technologies, we're typically having a plan B, right? If the technology fails, what can we do if the technology has failed, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the aspect of we shouldn't forget about the benefits in that case, where it's in a world like right now, and I'll give you an example. In Afghanistan, we used to provide food assistance to 15 million people last year. Right now, it's 3 million people that will be facing severe consequences of hunger, which means they will be dying of hunger. 3 million people, that's the only people we actually provide food assistance for still. There's 12 million people that we've cut from food assistance because we run out of cash. Now, in that scenario, is don't we owe it to the people we serve to say, okay, we make sure that the funds are most efficiently used. We are making sure it's getting to the people it's intended for. And this is when you get to the real consequence of some of these decisions that you're making.
Yeah. So let's focus on solutions then, because there are lots of good stuff coming through AI, and I think that's what we're trying to find out, and also want to hear about your hopes of what can come next in AI. Lauren, I've invited you because Gavi contacted me about this session, and they said that you have a partnership with them. I'd like to learn more about this partnership. Gavi is the Vaccine Alliance. It's an organization that delivers vaccine to immunize children in countries that don't have access to vaccines, basically. And so how do you work with them, and what's the partnership about?
So we've been working with Gavi to help them optimize their vaccine delivery program. And that's one body of work. And then the other area is to look at places for efficiency in maintaining cold chain delivery. A lot of our work right now is focused on making sure that ministries of health trust the data that they are getting so that they can use that data for decision making. Not surprisingly, a lot of that data is collected by community health workers who may have very different levels of education, may have very different levels of familiarity with digital tools. And when data comes back and you look at the data, and the data seems anomalous, there may seem to be data that is incorrect, you as a policymaker who are not there on the ground say, the data is not good, we can't use that, let's just go back to doing it the way that we used to do it. So we've developed a series of tools that we can use against data sets to help ministries identify whether or not data is truly outlier data or if it was just an error. So they can concentrate on making sure that the data that they are using is reliable. That allows Gavi to then work with ministries to say, okay, now that we have a good data set and we know where there are gaps in vaccines, how do we make sure that we target the populations that are in most of need of certain sets of vaccines? That has a huge implication in terms of efficiency for ministries, making sure that they are targeting scarce resources to the populations that can use it the most. It builds trust over time because they know that the data is reliable and we can build those techniques into other areas. And it helps us in identifying places where we need to do additional training with community health workers to make sure that the future data that we get is also increasingly robust. It's the beginning.
What country do you work in with this project?
So we're currently using a whole data set that was provided to us from Gavi that is, I don't even remember the number of countries that were in there. It was quite broad. We will then go back and go ministry by ministry once we've gotten through this sort of proof of concept and prototyping process.
All right, so where does the AI come into play then? It helps you better analyzing the data?
It helps us better in analyzing the data.
And make decisions on
and
it.
making decisions, right.
So then Gavi deploys, well, you get the supply chains, the cold chains,
exactly,
in the right place and try to reach, I guess,
exactly.
remote populations don't have access.
Exactly.
All right. Kate, do you have any specific example you'd like to mention?
So many. Look, I mean, a couple of...
what about the skill set one, for instance?
Actually, I mean, there's some really, I think, cool ways that AI is being used. One of the favourite ones that I like is we've partnered with an organisation called Seeds in India, and it's leveraging satellite imagery to look at the temperature of dwellings because people are dying from increases in heat. And leveraging that satellite imagery into something that you can look at on your mobile, and so you can literally see, okay, this particular dwelling, at this time, and again looking at climate data, is going to go over that threshold that is safe. And then you partnering with community workers on the ground to actually go in and do very targeted interventions. And I think that's a wonderful example as well of how you can use AI and then also have people doing what people need to do and can continue to do best, and actually doing that.
Actually, I have another example from Microsoft in health interventions as well. There was a project in Brazil where you were using tech to identify early stages of leprosy through taking pictures of skin and identifying it early to be able to treat faster, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of applications that can be applied in developed countries, but in developing countries too.
Yeah.
You wanted to
Can I just say one more that,
sure.
sort of speaks a little bit to the data? I mean, there's a lot of UN agencies and a lot of non-profits are sitting on a lot of incredibly valuable data, and one of the partnerships that that we have entered into recently is with IOM and the UN Migration Agency, and they have so much data, and looking at how can they leverage AI and AI analytics to better leverage the data that they already have to be able to facilitate more anticipatory action, and then also understand more about who's going to be migrating where, so that there can be information provided to stakeholders in countries that are going to be receiving people to actually be better prepared for that influx.
Mm-hmm. And Bernhard, you have good example of using GIS mapping as well. That's fairly straightforward. I know there's some other people in the room who do work on GIS mapping solutions. So you're currently using something to identify disaster relief solutions faster. What's the next stage? And what do you hope to see AI go to make you even more efficient in that space, for instance?
No, and I think there's really probably like there's two sides of it. One is like making organizations like the World Food Program the most efficient, like AI infused, like efficient effectiveness driven organization, so we can serve more people more effectively, right? The other one is on the angle of like kind of democratizing access, helping smaller farmers getting access to services or information that actually lifts them out of hunger. And I think for me, like this is on for making World Food Program or other organizations more effective. Like this is the example. I think we need to talk about hope or solutions where, the supply chain optimization example that I gave is like, yes, people have been doing that with Excel spreadsheets before. Now we're using big data analytics to essentially do supply chain optimization, food basket optimization, working right now on also carbon optimization of supply chains. And if we're able to save significant amounts of money doing that, it's like that's when you start asking yourself, like, why didn't we do that before? Well, because nobody had the computing power in their head or like manually doing that, right? Mm-hmm. But then on the kind of smaller pharma side, like this is where I think that's really exciting. Like one startup, Ignitia, that we worked with in our portfolio, they're providing precision ag information to smaller farmers. And even if they can't read and write right now, they get a text message with symbols that tells them, there's a storm coming, harvest now, like stuff like that. Another startup in our portfolio, it's called Bumitra. They actually won the Earthshot Prize this year by Prince William. And like what they're doing, they're using, again, satellite imagery, AI, and soil samples we are excited because they're telling, actually doing trainings with smaller farmers for carbon capture in soil, but then they can also issue carbon credits. When you then go into like, well, there's not only AI, it's not only technology, but there's also a business model, and we have more funding all of a sudden because they will be regenerating the soil and get carbon credits for doing that.
All right, that's a good example. Manu, what's the next frontier for you in AI for development?
So the way I think about both the challenges and the requirements for like what's next, but also what was before, is usually through like thinking of like 4 key ingredients or pillars. So the first one is data. So it's all the questions around access to data, like predictable access, especially when we talk about so-called big data, like non-traditional data that are usually collected and controlled by private companies. So you need like partnership agreements and stuff like that. And we still haven't really cracked that problem. So that's one like big like roadblock and challenge. And then all the questions of privacy, anonymity, and so on and so forth. The second piece is capacity. And so by capacity, I mean it can be technical capacity when you don't have Wi-Fi, when you don't have bandwidth, when you don't have all of those things. So we work in Iberia, for instance. I mean, having a Zoom call can be challenging.
That's where Microsoft comes into play.
Yeah, so we need infrastructure but also human capacity. So you have a widening gap. So that's clearly a problem and something that we need. You talked about fluency. I like this term. So I usually talk about data literacy, or other people talk about data literacy. So things like that. The third one is about communities, and by community I mean regulations, partnerships, trust between people, and it's tied with data because you also need data strategies, and a lot of countries don't have data strategies. So sometimes they leapfrog to AI strategies, but I think you also need an AI strategy, and you need trust between and some connections between people so that they can work together. And the last one is culture. So I always come back to culture. You need to have a culture and nurture, instill, beef up a culture where facts matter, where data matter, and sometimes the data and the facts will tell you don't use AI. So in the heat problem is I think it's a very good example of where technology can be both good and bad, because I think it's great that you can actually detect, heat, spikes. I read an article in the New Yorker a few weeks ago about actually heat in India. I can't remember. It's amazing. It's amazing. You can feel the heat reading the article. But we know that AI also is very energy hungry. And so there's all the discussion about low tech, and so I think that having this kind of AI mindset also sometimes tells you when you don't have, when you shouldn't use AI. But I think the central point and the final point is that we have to. The bottom line for me is to change the culture. to change the incentives, to change what matters and what we aim for.
All right, thanks for this point. We have 10 more minutes, so I'd like to take a couple questions from the audience. I'll take 2 or 3 at a time. If you can briefly introduce yourself and just ask a question, please. Yeah, go for it.
Sure, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Prabhu. I represent an organization called Humanitarian in India. We're using AI to deliver social security programs to last mile people on the ground. I'm here with Global Shape, was a group of young people under the age of 30. My question is for Kate.
Okay.
Kate, you mentioned you're actually investing in a lot of making sure how technology becomes accessible to non-profits. In India and in many of the developing economies, I've seen many times non-profits and social enterprises lack the skills and talent to actually be able to leverage AI. My question is, how is Microsoft ensuring that accessibility in AI when it comes to humanitarian assistance is something that is taken care of, so that we really are able to leverage it for its intended purpose? So that's the question.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the how I was saying earlier about how to make sure that technology is affordable for organisations, and that we provide skilling programs, and so the AI skilling that is available to, really everybody everywhere should have access. With the AI skills campaign that we launched last June. Millions and millions and millions of people have actually completed that training. So there's just an incredible appetite. One thing that we're investing in, sort of a new initiative, is a non-profit community platform. And so that's a way to actually try and scale and broaden out the availability of what we can provide, because there's so many non-profits around the world. And we really hope that that's going to be a place where non-profits of all sizes can go to learn about technology, and also learn from each other as well. One of the other areas that we're investing in is a digital development program in LDCs and countries, IDA countries, and working with governments there with there's a sort of a number of different factors. One is around an affordable pricing framework, so similar to what we've been able to do for non-profits. How can we also provide that kind of pricing framework to governments that are interested in digitally transforming, around like education or healthcare and public services, and putting some advisory around that? That also really helps these solutions be sustainable. At the end of the day, in the room, we always really hope that there's private sector, non-profit, and government, but that's a way as well to help ensure that any solutions are sustainable and scalable.
Yeah, then I had a few questions at the back there. I'll go there and there. Yeah, you go for it. So one question on responsible AI, and Vince, you had a question there?
Yeah, hi, my name is Vince Chadwick, I'm a journalist with Devex. I'm wondering whether everyone agrees what AI is.
Probably not.
Yeah.
A lot of the examples sound like big data. Sometimes it sounds like an umbrella term for something technological we don't quite understand. I might have a space odyssey version of what AI is, but I wonder if, among the panelists, if we actually all agree on what it is, and is that a problem if we don't?
All right. That's a long question. That's a short question, but a long answer, I'm sure, but maybe not. Do you want to answer in responsible AI, Lauren?
So my gut tells me is no, we don't. We don't have a common definition of what AI is, and I don't know that it actually matters. I think
Agree.
I think AI, the thing that's been amazing about AI and what has happened over the last year is, for all of us that have worked in data for a long time, data science was boring, and it was hard, and it was confusing, and it seemed really inaccessible to people. But what has happened with generative AI over the last 18 months is it has ignited a spark of interest in really thinking about new and interesting ways to think about leveraging technology against some intractable and very difficult problems. And so from that perspective, I don't want us to get hung up on the what's in what bucket and where does the Venn diagram overlap, because I think what is interesting is we have this spark, and there's an opportunity for us to think, even as quickly as the technology is moving and quickly as things are moving in the private sector, of how do we make sure that the communities that have been traditionally underserved and left behind are not left further behind and forgotten even more as we are thinking about what could be possible with AI.
Kate, you wanted to answer quickly to
Yeah, I love that question, and I do think that our data science team goes crazy sometimes, going like, people are talking about AI like it's new, and it's not new. It's like, as Lauren said, it's ChatGPT that's kind of creating all the buzz, and I think the most remarkable thing is it's like the most powerful technology that we've seen in a long time. Just the fact that it has that natural use language interface puts it in the hands of everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just the incredible opportunity, and that's where I think it is important to understand, the difference, because there's a real opportunity to get to make sure that people, and it addresses some of the issues that have been talked about around, everybody being represented in data sets. If more people know how to actually use this technology, I think the better it's going to be.
It's about how to use it as well. I used AI to prepare some of the questions for the panel. I ended up not using them. But Manu, on responsible AI, do you want to take this one quickly?
So super quick. So
we have 3 minutes and lots of questions.
So I define AI as a mindset. And so, Andreas Weigen defined that like years ago about, So, okay. Now, and we can, I don't think it matters very much how we define it, but happy to discuss.
So responsible AI.
Okay, so you talked specifically about children. Okay, so I talked about data literacy. So 10 years ago, so I, with other people, wrote a paper on data literacy, which we framed as literacy in the age of data. And I talked about the data generation. So this generation of kids born in the internet. And okay, so I have 3 daughters, 2 twin daughters who are 13 and a half. So they're TikTok addict, and I have a 4-year-old daughter. I'm pretty versed into these topics, and I have a very hard time getting them to understand the risks, the opportunities, and I try, and I tell them this is my job, and da 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 da. So likewise, I'm going to say I'm a bit skeptical. What concerns me is that even they who check all the boxes of privilege, they don't really understand, I think, the risks, the limitations, we don't have time.
2 minutes.
Basically, I think it will take a massive investment in awareness raising, literacy, greater by a factor of n compared to what I see now.
All right, I have 2 minutes, 2 questions. I'll take these two. Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Hiram. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm a global shaper like Prabhu, representing Turkey. My question is, this morning we were discussing with other shapers around the world, and a shaper from Tanzania, Dar al-Aslam, mentioned that a lot of people in this country doesn't have access to internet and smartphones. So sometimes when we talk about the Gen Z and this new generation, we greatly assume that they are digital natives, data literacy, all that. But there's actually a large community of young people and generation that are not digital literate. So how do we also include those communities in these discussions about AI, and how do we ensure we do not carry the discriminations and inequalities in the world to the future in the AI?
Okay, we won't have an answer. We won't have time, but I think you can talk to Bernhard about that. I know you spoke about it. We take
could be an own panel on that. So
one last question. Go for it quickly.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your definition of your strategy with the four components. And I think they're extremely important, and they, I think, apply to all technology for good. Now, this is a strategy. It should be a national strategy. How do we get now that countries, or UN for that matter, goes on a strategic level, so that then trickling down, we do all the right things that you did mention, that we can really deploy well these technologies.
All right, thanks. Last 1 minute to close. Your wish list, your one thing on your wish list to the future of AI for humanitarian development applications?
I think the
Not the least, one
No,
wish.
yeah, one thing. I was trying to think, which one would I pick? I'll make it simple. I hope we keep having these conversations, because as this series of questions has exposed, there are lots of different aspects to AI and the deployment of AI that we need to continue to explore, continue to have conversations around, and push the envelope on thinking about what we need to be doing so that we don't take a wrong step that leads us into a place where AI is not as beneficial as we are all hoping that it can be.
All right, Emmanuel?
I would say that I would like to see like young people who are very smart and who have big fancy degrees and etc. to not want to make just money, but actually do something meaningful. And of course the easy answer is you can have both. I'm not too sure about that. I think
we have some shapers here. You can make them.
So anyway, yeah, I think so that people want to do more meaningful things.
All right, Kate?
That we have more conversations with multi-stakeholders around the room, and that everybody stays open-minded and curious as we're all on this journey together.
All right.
I believe we need to bring more capacity and knowledge into the sector, development, humanitarian, solving big challenges. So whether it's partnerships, people volunteering, or my vision is let's just get the equivalent of $1 billion of either cash or capacities together, and then imagine what we could actually achieve.
All right, great. So thank you so much. I invite you to continue reading on this topic on Devex, and you can meet them.
Speaking of heat, I'm boiling.
If they leave fast, I think on the AI House website you can find their LinkedIn profiles and try to stalk them online. All right, thanks.